Another quick question from me about something that came up on an Arcadian Vanguard show that will be out in the future. Reviewing some stuff from John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight. When you and Stan leave WCW, the NWA, everyone is saying you guys are basically waiting until May, and that's when Bobby will be free.
Yeah.
And then you guys could do stuff, including possibly Japan. Early 1991, it is said on the show that Bobby signs a new deal for 2 years for, I think, maybe $165,000, maybe in that range. Did you talk to him? Did he say, like, hey, they offered me a new deal and I'm going to sign it? This is right when Dusty returned.
Yeah, well, see that, luckily, that's what happened. See, here's the thing. They were beating us every night. I had to pull teeth the first time to get to midnight 125 apiece with Jim Herd. And then when we were ready to leave after the renewal in April 1990, everybody voted and overruled Herd. He had to renew our contract, so we got that renewal. I'm like, fuck. So Stan and I left. We told Bobby we'd got together. So don't worry, because our deals are up in May. We wanted to leave last year. Herd is certainly not going to want you around any more than he did all of us, next year. So, and I knew that I was already talking to Rick Rubin, and the plan was that they would be, instead of the Heavenly Bodies, it'd be the Midnight Express and Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Then the problem became that Dusty came back, and of course, as soon as he's the new booker and they're wanting to give the new booker everything he wants, well, Dusty Rhodes is not going to not sign Bobby Eaton. So they actually signed him and gave him a raise. And that's what, Bobby called me, Corny. They offered me another deal and more money. I said, well, fucking take it. I ain't going to pay you $150,000 or whatever it was. And that's when I started, looking around for Stan's new partner. But and it ended up that Bobby had the last laugh in a way on him, because they tried to run us off, and finally it at least did with me and Stan, and broke up the team. Bobby Eaton ended up being the longest continuous running employee of that company during the Turner years. He was there when they bought it, and they didn't fucking let him go until, 1999 or possibly early 2000. So he was there continuously longer than ever, even when they signed him to contracts and he'd go down and do the syndicated TV in Florida once every 2 months, and otherwise you'd never even see him. They were paying him six figures because nobody wanted to be the one that did not sign. When you've got Bobby Eaton working for your wrestling promotion, nobody wanted to be the one not to fucking re-sign him.
So in early 91, when Dusty gets them to re-sign Bobby and give him a new 2-year deal, is this around the same period of time where he talks to you and tries to get you and Stan to come back?
Yes. Well, he asked if Stan was interested, but he was really talking to me, because at that point, he didn't even talk about putting the Midnight Express back together, because Herd was still there. And nobody wanted to fucking interact with Herd any more than they had to. And he knew that would probably be something that Herd would have a conniption fit about. But he wanted me to come back primarily to be an announcer, because they were still hung up on that. They still wanted me to do announcing instead of managing. So, and actually, some people may not have heard this story first, but it's some point there when he got back and took the book at that point in 91. He called me because I was still, at that point, I was still living in Charlotte. So I still had the same number. He called me and asked if I'd come to Atlanta. Nobody knew what I was doing to start setting up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want people fucking it up, trying to get in first, getting in the way, whatever the case, right?
Who didn't know? For the record, I mean, I know Horner was involved with you when you started, Sandy Scott.
Well, hold on. That was
who knew, if anyone, that you were talking to Rick Rubin about starting your own thing?
Horner had to know, because he was one of the people I didn't want to get in the way and muddy things up. He'd found some guy that had $40,000. He was going to open up Knoxville. I'm like, God damn, come here. Let me tell you something. I smartened him up so he wouldn't let the guy spend his $40,000 and piss off a TV station. Sandy Scott, me, my wife, Rick Rubin, and Cat Collins. and Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton. I'm trying to
think.
Also,
Stan and Bobby actually knew everything you were doing.
Yes, I was telling him in the car with our last 6 months at WCW. I'm reading the Atlas. Goddamn Knoxville, look, Johnson City, boom, this and fucking yes, and blah, blah, blah. That's what every once in a while, when we'd be at a house show, Bobby would just blurt out, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Shut up, God damn it. And nobody else understood what the fuck even in the match that we're talking about. Right? I said, don't kayfabe the name. Somebody will trademark something. But yeah, I think that was basically and then some people that we started talking to at first outside the business in terms of production. Well, what if we did this and that and the other thing and blah, blah, blah. But no, so what I told Dusty, getting back to that story too late, when Dusty called me, remember I had been doing the LPWA tapings, the Ladies Professional Wrestling Association tapings.
You had been doing that, and you were doing stuff in Memphis with the Fabulous Ones.
Well, we did that early in the year, and then that got cut off. The Gulf War. Remember, last week they had a question. Well, when Jarrett and Lawler would switch the booking duties, would they finish up the storylines, and how long would it take, and blah, blah, blah. So they could do that in one fucking night. Just beat the fucking heels. That's it. The Gulf War had been preempting all of our TVs, so we had more we wanted to do with that, but Jarrett was like, well, you guys got a guarantee. All right. Anyway, so we got that done. And then I was doing the LPWA tapings, which Joe Pedicino had called up. He was doing the play-by-play. Wanted to know if I'd do the color for old Tor Berg, the promoter out of Minnesota. But we did them in Laughlin, Nevada, once a month, 4 TV shows. Okay, well, I'm really not working in 1991. I took most of the year off to set up Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So I made a few shots around the Carolinas for Bobby Fulton and a guy in Virginia. But really all that I was doing was the LPWA tapings because it was a nice payoff for one fucking weekend a month. And the rest of the time I was, doing mother shit. So I told Dusty, he said, well, what are you doing, kid? I said, well, I'm doing these LPWA tapings. And he started calling it the LPGA. You're doing the LPGA. But anyway, that was here's the thing. I love Dusty, and I didn't want to lie to Dusty, and I didn't lie to Dusty. I just omitted all the truth. He calls me to come down to Atlanta, comes to his office. He says, I'm the booker now. I want you to come back. You won't have to see Jim Hood. You won't have to talk to Jim Hood. You won't know Jim Hood's around. You'll deal with me. And that was tempting, especially for $150,000 a year, which is where I left off. So I certainly wasn't going to come back for any less. But I knew that eventually it wouldn't be true because Hurd could not stay away or stay out of it. And he never did until he left, a year and a half later, he didn't. And I didn't want Dusty to think that I didn't want to work with him. And I made the point of telling him, Dusty, I'd walk through hell with gasoline britches on for you. But I hate this fucking Jim Hurd. I hate this company. They've the Midnight was made to look like shit, and now we're fucking broke up. And he said, well, I want you to be an announcer, kid. I said, well, I don't want to do that. I wanted to be the manager of the Midnight Express. And I love you, Dusty. But I tell you what, so then I gave him a Heyman offer. Remember when Heyman said he'd be glad to come in and help Dixie Carter save TNA if only they gave him a piece of the company? And the reason he said that is because they knew they wouldn't give him a piece of the company. So therefore he could say I offered and they wouldn't give me my demands. So it's not my fault. I said, tell you what, Dusty, I said, since the people at the LPWA have been so good to me and, I'm friends with Joe Pedicino and this promoter, he's a real nice guy. I'll be glad to come back if I can still do the LPWA tapings once a month. Which I knew was an instant thing. And they were paying me $1,000 a taping plus a plane ticket for me and my wife at the time, both. That was it. What would that be today from $30 to $2,500? But the point is, it didn't mean that much to me, but I knew that when he went back to, they would never approve signing an announcer for their wrestling program, especially for that much money that was also doing the LPWA. So that's how I was able to not just tell Dusty no, but still get out of it without telling him that I was working on my own fucking company, and Jim Herd and WCW could go fuck themselves.
Was anything brought up about your contract? Because you were still under contract. You dared them to do something about it.
No, I wouldn't. No, because he sent me a release. He'd already said.
Oh, they did send you the release by that point when you talked to Dusty.
Yeah, I've got it here in the. Yeah, because we left on what, October 30th. I had the release sometime by the first part of December. I'd have to go back and way back in the files and find it at this point. And we're talking about talking to Dusty in spring or whatever of next year.
Was it that late? Because Dusty returned in January.
Well, then it was probably more like February or March. Whatever. It was a little while after Dusty had been back, but I already had the release at that point. Because here's the thing. As soon as when we walked out, went home, spent some time in Charlotte at home, and then I came up to, since I hadn't been off in so long, I came up to Louisville and was visiting my mom. And I can't remember how the phone call was instigated, whether it was booked in advance for that specific day or whatever, but I remember being in the downstairs bedroom here at the castle on the phone with Jim Herd while I was up here in Louisville, because they had sent me a letter saying that we will consider you in breach of your contract unless you show up at such and such place and such place after your misunderstanding with Ole Anderson, the booker. And I didn't show up. And I, somewhere or another, we'd set up the call with Herd. And I told him, I said, Jim, I have no intention of coming back to work for you. I don't want to come back to WCW, and I'm not going to. I said, now, you don't have to worry about me going to the WWF. And these are my God's honest exact words. On my mother's grave, I said this to Jim Herd. I'm not going to the WWF because I just got out of one company that's turned wrestling into a fucking cartoon joke, and I've got no inclination to go to another one. And I said, I have some things I want to do, which one of them was actually working in Memphis. I said, I've got some things that I want to do. I didn't tell him about Smokey Mountain Wrestling. I said, now I'm going to do them, whether I'm under contract to you or not. So you can send me a release and you can delineate that I am not allowed to go to the WWF in it if you want, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I'm fucking sick and fed up with hating the wrestling business. And that was my end. Well, we'll get your receipt. We'll get your release and we'll put that in it because I don't want to just that's what he had said. I don't want to just hand somebody to Vince. And I said, that's when I said that line. I got no fucking interest in going there because I just got out of this situation.
And by the way,
I'm getting back into wrestling
business.
By
the way, in terms of handing people to Vince, that's exactly what he did with Sid, with Flair that year, 91.
Yeah, well,
the Road Warriors, he handed everyone to Vince.
Besides the precedent, remember the other precedent he didn't want to set? I've told this before. I called him one time from my hotel room and fucking somewhere on the road for WCW earlier that year. And I said, Jim, you don't want us around here. You're paying the boys $125,000 a piece, me $150,000 to do a job that you could put a local tag team with no manager in and fucking save the plane tickets. So why don't you just give us half of what you owe us on our contracts and we'll go home right now. Save all that trance and everything. I don't want to start that precedent. Then just months after me and Stan walked out, he started that precedent with Jimmy Garvin by giving him like $180,000 out of a 2-year, $150,000 a year contract to go home.
Well, the precedent was actually get full contract and go home, the Iron Sheik rule.
Well, yeah, they just signed him and then sent him home because he was so fucking bad. They couldn't fucking have him on TV. But anyway, so that's how I got and then when he sent the release, it didn't say a word about you can't go to the WWF. So he couldn't even write a release right. But I worked the Memphis run with the Fabs. And see, Eddie Gilbert was booking then, and he'd already called me and actually just booked me. When I told him I was going to come home, I'd come down to the Gardens and fucking talk to him. So I watched TV that Saturday, and I was booked in Jeff Jarrett's corner. Shit, I got to go buy a suit.
Were you still there when Eddie went AWOL?
Well, that's the thing. Well, no, he didn't go AWOL that time. Or did he? I don't think he did. The point is,
he was booking and then he just disappeared. Right?
Okay, well,
no one could find him.
Well, I don't know whether they took the book before he disappeared and then he disappeared, or he disappeared and then they took the book, because I wasn't in the territory. We made the deal with Eddie. We came in and did a couple of shots as baby faces, and then I pitched the idea. I said, how about fucking Fabs turn on Lawler? And we go through Lawler and Dundee and Lawler and Jeff, and then we bring Fargo and a blah, blah, blah. Because business was horrible at that point in time. And Memphis, with $5,000 was the house in Memphis the Monday night before we started that program. And after about 6 weeks, we got it up to, I think, 12, which was still abysmal. But anyway, I pitched Eddie on it. We started it. And then that's when Jerry Jarrett called me at home in Charlotte and said, well, Eddie's no longer our booker. I said, oh, shit. He said, so can you tell me what your program was supposed to be, what you've already started? I said, God damn, he didn't tell you. No, I don't know. So I laid the whole thing out for him. He loved it. He said, all right, we'll do it. So that was only after the first week. He kept doing it. About 6 weeks later, then he cut it off before we got to the part where we hurt Fargo. And then 2 weeks later, he comes back and finally we do the big blow off. Because the Gulf War, that's when they were bombing over there, and every Saturday they'd preempt the goddamn TVs. Half the TVs didn't fucking show. It was the Republicans had to start a war to ruin my big angle in Memphis, where I finally got to be a main eventer. That's the only territory I ever worked where I never got to be a consistent main eventer.
Well, anyway, for the record, the entire country supported that war.
But not on fucking Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. Well, Channel 5's supposed to be showing wrestling.
You can't pick what time the war
Did they have
happens.
to show it live? Couldn't they have showed clips on the fucking... They didn't preempt wrestling in Memphis for the World Series. But that's why we were so stunned. Guy Coffey was there in the fucking Channel 5 break room, and we're off the air for like 30 minutes, and it's going on time where the next program's going to be on. And I remember Guy Coffey saying, I'd never seen this happen before in this town. Wrestling, it'd been tornadoes. Wrestling wasn't World Series games, presidential elections. You didn't fucking preempt wrestling. Anyway. But yeah, so that was the whole thing. It was basically, from the time that I escaped from WCW, I was kayfabe setting up Smoky Mountain Wrestling, doing a couple of things or make a couple of extra dollars and just, fucking see what was going on around that. But I avoided, the Dusty's WCW offer by, misdirecting him rather than outright lying to him. But no, I didn't want to go back there because Dusty was still the booker, not the supposed executive vice president. Then I went back when Watts had the Herd job, and he was supposed to have complete say over everything. That's why I went back. And as soon as I found out that he didn't have complete say over everything, when they edited our invasion of the show and didn't run it by him first, then okay, we're going to do this match, and I'm gone again. And then it turned out Watts was gone before we did the match, but he had put our deal in writing and sent it to me. He called me that day. He said, I'm going to be gone by the time this pay-per-view happens. So I'm faxing the handshake deal that we made in writing so that they can't fuck you. And it's signed by me, and I still have the fucking position. And that's exactly what we did, or elsewise they would have fucked me on my 25 grand. Because then Ole was like, 25 grand? Because he's the one that took over. Why are we supposed to pay you guys 25 grand? I said, because, Ole, you just let fucking your wrestling company there, Turner Broadcasting, spend $50,000 for a midget to blow up a boat in a mini movie to promote a pay-per-view. So what I did was I conceived, booked the talent for, executed a television angle and 4 weeks of promotion leading up to a pay-per-view match, which I furnished you and which we performed. And you owe me $25,000 per Bill Watts. All right.
Well, for the record,
get your goddamn check.
For the record, the midget had yet to blow up the boat. He had only hung out in the dirty cafe for Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, and been in the White Castle of Fear with Vader.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't the midget blowing up the boat. It was the White Castle of Fear thing they spent $50 grand on.
The White Castle of Fear. Why did White Castle sue them?
Because Vader loved them hamburgers, them little square. Fucking hell. But that's actually how I pitched that to Watts. When I went down, had a meeting, he called me and come down, let's do something. All right. I said, how about this? I said, it's conservatively, they spent 50 grand on that mini movie, right? That boy, he's, yeah. I said, I'll take half and I'll fucking give you the hottest babyface tag team that this company ever had. And it's almost most arch rivals, plus one, because then we had access to Bobby. And we'll shoot the angle and I'll furnish you tape from my company and we'll come down and we'll do the goddamn TVs to promote it. And we'll have the fucking match on pay-per-view for half the money that they spent on a 3-minute mini movie. And he shook hands with me on it.